Welcome inside our SI.com studios to another episode of Give and Go, SI.com's critically acclaimed web series, where we debate three of the biggest storylines in the NBA. In today's episode, we discuss the Cavaliers slide, Kevin Durant's future, and the ugly situation with the Knicks in New York. Joining me from Los Angeles is a man who wears makeup even when he's not on camera, SI senior writer Lee Jenkins. What's up, Lee?
Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm good. Lee, topic number one. The Cavs have dropped 5 straight games. They are 500 for the first time since the first 2 weeks of the season. David Blatt recently corrected a reporter who called Kevin Love a max player. Lee, on the scale of 1 to 10, how panicked should people be in Cleveland?
Put it an 8, I guess, if I have to put a number on it. I mean, LeBron's been hurt, so it's hard to take the 5 games too seriously that they've lost in a row. But they were bad when he was there, too, and he was playing with them. Yeah, I think the hope in Cleveland, I guess, is that the East is so bad that they're able to stabilize in a way that the 2012 Lakers never could. You know, that Shumpert and Mozgov firm up the defense enough, and they're able to kind of get it together here in the second half. But I don't know. I mean, it looks as if potentially the ship has sailed. If David Blatt has lost his team, if Kevin Love's already thinking ahead to the summer, there probably is no hope for them making a deep run. I still think they'll probably make the playoffs just because the East is so bad. But the bottom could fall out there.
Yeah, it's almost impossible not to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference with that kind of talent. And I never expected, Lee, this team to win a championship this year. I just don't think it can happen because it happened with Boston in 07-08. It didn't happen with Miami in 10-11. And in the past, we've seen, like you mentioned, that Laker team that was ill-fated, a team not succeed when you put a group of players together. My shock, really, is how poorly Kevin Love has kind of fit in there. I mean, Kevin can't seem to find his groove. He wants to play more inside. David Blatt wants him to play more outside. And I don't know if it was a slip of the tongue with David Blatt in calling Kevin Love not a max player because technically he is a max player. He's under a max contract right now, and presumably he will be a max player in his next deal. But if I'm Cleveland, my biggest concern is that throughout this season they alienate Kevin Love so much that he's going to say, you know what, I can make more money in a 5-year deal with the Cavaliers, but it's just not worth my time coming back. I'm taking a 4-year deal somewhere else.
I think that's more than a fear at this point. I mean, I think that's probably hinging toward reality. You know, I mean, it's possible, I suppose, that they make a run and are able to, convince him to stay. But, Chris, if you were betting right now on whether Kevin Love is in Cleveland, if I gave you Cleveland or the field and you're picking for next year, don't you pick the field at this point?
I think right now I still take Cleveland just because I know Kevin wanted a 5-year deal with Minnesota, and that's a lot of money to turn your back on. Carmelo Anthony probably didn't want to go back to New York, and we'll talk more about him later, but he took that 5th year because it was an outlandish amount of money to guarantee yourself. I feel like ultimately at the end of the day, unless things are so Dwight Howard, Lakers-esque toxic, that these guys are going to take that money.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, the Dwight Howard situation, it was toxic, but it was still the Lakers and L.A. Kevin Love, obviously, no allegiance to that area at all. All he's known there right now so far is disappointment. I almost think they have to kind of reimagine his role moving forward. And if you're not going to win it all, well, you probably weren't going to win it all anyway. I mean, this guy has to be appeased moving forward, or they traded Andrew Wiggins for nothing. I mean, to me, the Love situation is probably the most fascinating in the NBA because if he does hit free agency, the Knicks and the Lakers, 2 teams that look completely hopeless, all of a sudden the specter of Kevin Love kind of changes everything for those 2 franchises.
Yeah, and it would be even worse for Cleveland if they lose Kevin Love and watch Andrew Wiggins become a big-time star. He's got the look of it right now.
Yeah, he's playing a lot better.
He might develop very quickly. All right, topic number 2. The Thunder are a game under 500 and on the outside looking in on the postseason. OKC has to go 32-13 to get to 50 wins, which frankly is what it might take to get into the playoffs in the West. Lee, can they do it?
Of course they can. They can. I think they probably will. But you just wonder about that team. The alchemy there, just like in Cleveland, it seems like, they're both going through these similar situations. And, did these trades accomplish anything for them? I don't know that they were negative in any way. I don't know that they took anything away. I also don't know that they helped. I mean, a guy like Waiters is someone else who needs the ball in his hands all the time. Reggie Jackson needs the ball. Westbrook, we know, needs the ball. Durant likes to score with the ball. So you just look at the chemistry of that team all of a sudden, and while they've slipped a bit, Other teams in the West have obviously risen. You combine that with the injury factor, OKC's obviously in a lot of trouble, and I think Scott Brooks is sort of like David Blatt right now. I mean, I know he's had a ton of success in the NBA, but these teams' windows, they're not necessarily going to be open forever. Both have superstars to appease, and right now they're clearly not doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they can get there. It is kind of an arms race right now in the Western Conference. We saw Jeff Green go to Memphis. That's a big upgrade. Brandon Wright, someone the Suns grabbed to give them depth on that front line. There's moves happening in Denver. Wilson Chandler, I think, could be available for one of these Western Conference contenders. But I think Oklahoma City can get there. And I think they have to get there because these are really two critical years for them when it comes to Kevin Durant. I mean, the summer of 2016, frankly, it's not that far off. And I think Oklahoma City internally has to know that they have to have some serious postseason success for them to convince this guy to stay. I think if they win a championship, Kevin Durant's likely to stay. I think he's committed to that team if they win. But, Lee, you've covered this guy. What do you think happens to Kevin Durant if this team bows out of the playoffs this year and bows out in the playoffs early next year?
I think he'll leave. If that scenario unfolded, I do think he'll leave. I'm not saying it's a sure thing, but I think that it would be a difficult play. It would be difficult for Oklahoma City if they fall short again and the Westbrook-Durant marriage doesn't yield the ultimate fruit to convince him to try it again, for another 5 years with Westbrook. If it hasn't worked by then, I don't know that either of them will feel like it's going to work. And the other gamble for Durant, of course, is if he stays and then Westbrook were to bolt in 2017, and then he's not left with the core that he thought he would. And I'm sure he can entice players to Oklahoma City on his own, but he knows, I'm sure, that it's still a tougher sell. My question, Chris, for you is, let's say they fall short this year, because it seems like the deck is stacked against them right now. Do you definitely take Kevin Durant to free agency? I mean, I assume you do, but we've seen so many teams burned when the player won't commit one way or another. And it looks as though Durant, he's not going to come out and say that he's coming back to Oklahoma City. They enter such a dangerous predicament. Would Presti ever consider pulling the trigger on a deal for him? Or do you basically play all or nothing in 2015-16 that you kind of have to win a title and convince him? Obviously, if you win a title, very hard to walk away.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both know that Sam Presti in Oklahoma City is a forward-thinking guy. If he thinks that something's going to go badly for him and for this franchise, he won't hesitate to pull the trigger on something. But I think a guy like Durant is an exception. I think you do have to put all your chips on the table with this guy, do everything humanly possible to get him. And that's why I think they traded that future first-round pick to get Dion Waiters. Waiters has a lot of flaws. He doesn't pass the ball. He's a volume scorer. But they effectively get him for nothing in terms of talent that wasn't on the roster before. Now you've got Reggie Jackson, Dion Waiters with that second unit. You've got a little more scoring punch that might help you in the postseason. It's something of a risk, but I think it's a risk you have to take. Russell Westbrook, that might be a different story. I can see them moving Westbrook if a better deal comes along that nets them a point guard. But Kevin Durant, I think they've got to roll the dice and hope that their success will make Kevin Durant want to stay with that extra year. All right, topic number 3, the New York Knicks. Every time, Lee, I think this team has bottomed out, they dig a little deeper. New York lost by 28 points to Charlotte on Saturday, dropping the Knicks to 5-35 on the season. Lee, if you're Phil Jackson, what do you do?
I think you've done what you're going to do. They're going to strip it down. They're going to get a high draft pick, and we're going to see the gravity of Phil Jackson in free agency. If it is what Jim Dolan thought it was, if it's less than that, he's going to make his mark there. And I think we always knew that. That's why the hire was made, so that the Knicks would have a franchise face to go in and talk to players in the summer. That combined with the pick, combined with money coming off the books, there's an enticing option there. I mean, whoever goes in first to the Knicks and is signed, they have a chance to, be part of transforming something there. The question is just, to me, Carmelo Anthony's contract. Is Carmelo Anthony a player that other players around the league will want to play with and will entice to go there? Or is this already become an albatross contract? That's going to set the Knicks back again, and it's going to make free agents not look at the Knicks as seriously, where a team like the Lakers may be better off having nothing moving forward than having something.
Yeah, I agree with you when it comes to Carmelo. I think they have to look long and hard at his situation with New York and if it's tenable to rebuild around this guy. I don't think was a bad idea for them to sign him to this deal because they weren't going to have cap space in that summer anyway. So it's not like you're swapping Carmelo out for somebody else. You either sign him or you get nothing. Now you get him. Maybe this offseason you can flip him with 4 years left on his deal. And if you decide to do that, there will be teams across the league looking to get him. Houston's not going to wake up tomorrow and decide, well, maybe we don't want Carmelo. Same thing with Dallas. Same thing with Chicago. Same thing with the Lakers. So you can still get assets for Carmelo Anthony if you decide to deal him. My question with the Knicks, though, Lee, is Phil Jackson really the right guy to have this job? He was the biggest name out there, no question. He brings gravitas, he brings stability to the situation. But if I'm the Knicks, why don't I offer half the money I gave Phil Jackson to Masai Ujiri instead of dealing with him and giving him your first-round picks all the time? Why don't I go down to San Antonio and say, R.C. Buford, here's that $12 million. Do for us what you did for the Spurs for the last 15 years. Phil Jackson, to me, has proven so much on the sideline. He's proven nothing in the front office box. And this offseason, forget free agency, he is going to have to hit a home run with that first-round draft pick for the Knicks to rebuild. Because unless they hit with that pick, it's going to be a long 5-6 years before New York recovers from it.
I just think it's too early to say because, like you said, he's unproven. Yeah, those would have been more stable moves. I mean, those would have been more sure things. Masai's a sure thing at this point. R.C. Buford's a sure thing. Presti also. But that's not what the Knicks do. I mean, the Knicks wanted to get a franchise face. They wanted to have a celebrity, somebody put out on their marquee. That's what they always want. And in this case, it was Phil Jackson. So, yeah, those moves would have made more sense from a pedigreed GM perspective. But it's not the playbook the Knicks ever operate from, it seems. And I think it's too early to say that Phil Jackson's a bust or will be a bust because he's just such a complete unknown at this point as an executive. I mean, all we have to evaluate him on is a few months. So, I'd want to see what he does this summer and more specifically next summer, 16, to see if his weight with free agency is what it was, is it maybe what it would have been as a coach, or if free agents don't really look at him that way. And I don't know, Chris. I'm not sure about that. I mean, I had a free agent tell me last summer that them getting Phil Jackson would be enough to get a meeting with the Knicks and take them more seriously. But to me, his name is kind of on the line in that way.
Yeah, I mean, this Knicks team always goes for the big splash, but it seems like we watched them rebuild and then rebuild and then rebuild again and not really get anywhere. They're still as far away from a championship as they were after the Patrick Ewing era ended in New York. All right, Lee, great job. Go back to work. Appreciate the time here.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right, that's it for Give and Go. Catch us this week and every week right here on SI.com.